What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Like I said, today's going to be an SMG video. Yesterday was the long-range meta. Today's going to be the close-range meta for the Season 3 updated patch notes that they just released yesterday. I spent all morning going over all the SMGs, testing them out in-game as well, so I could get a feel for what the recoil feels like. And I think I've pretty much discovered what the meta is. Pretty well defined, at least, in multiple different categories. So we'll go over that in a second. As always, if you guys like the content, you like all the work I put into the website, be really appreciated if you dropped a like on the video and a comment. And if you want to see more content that I make, be sure to subscribe. But let's jump into it, and we will talk about the Season 3 SMG meta. So the best TTK calculator that I built for TGD is just perfect for this kind of thing. Basically, for SMGs, the first thing you should look at, in my opinion, is the time to kill. You need a really fast time to kill. And that is the power of this tool. So on TGD, this is a premium feature. You can add whatever guns you want. So add all the SMGs in the game just by selecting SMG and then clicking the add button. This will update based on what you select. So it's such as the ARs, LMGs, SMGs, and you can select individual weapons as well if you want to just add one to the comparison. But I just want to look at all the SMGs in the game from any different game. You can set up your parameters. So I'm going to look at TTK, 300 health, at 7 meters. You can select any range that you want, and it'll find the TTKs at that range. So I've got combinations set up, and then I'm just going to generate the list, and it's done really intelligently. This is probably one of the best things I've programmed on TGD. If someone else has searched for something that contains your search, it's cached in the system, so it'll load instantly. This is a really process-intensive thing to generate, because if you look down here, there's 97 pages of 10, or I think it's 15 builds per page. What this does is looks through all the attachments, every combination of things that could improve TTK or make TTK worse, and it will spit out the exact build that generates that TTK at that range. And it's just super powerful for the SMG meta specifically. It's not very useful yet for long range because it doesn't incorporate accuracy, which is obviously the most important thing in longer range engagements. So it doesn't work for that yet, but that's coming soon. I've got so many things I want to do this. This was like the base version, and it's already useful how it is, but like, I get people asking me for things with this all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I've already thought of that. It's coming. I just haven't had a chance to work on it because I'm so busy. But anyway, so looking at this, I went through probably the first 10 or 15 pages and pulled out all the guns that really made sense for the best TTK and just things that would be viable, and that's what we're going to go over in this video. Okay, so I've got all of the top contenders from the best TTK calculator on this comparison chart. This is 300 health combination shots, but actually most of these the statements I'm going to make about these guns are going to hold true for both, 400 health in Iron Trials, 250 health in Rebirth, and 300 health in regular BR. So right off the bat, you see that the Type 100 with this build is the orange line, insanely faster than everything else in the game right now. At 300, 400 health, I was playing Iron Trials a bunch the other day, and I was using this Type 100. In this recent patch, they reduced the visual recoil, so it doesn't bounce nearly as much. It's still going to have a lot of recoil, but it doesn't bounce nearly as much. And it felt like I was playing regular BR. Like the TTK at 400 health felt like the TTK at 300 health. That's how fast it was killing people. And the reason it comes out so far on top is because it just does an insane amount of damage across the body and has a relatively high fire rate. The one big issue with the Type 100 that really holds it back is just the 36-round mag. So the Russian short gives you these insane damage numbers and TTK numbers, but it only gets 36 bullets. So obviously, for people playing quads, I don't personally mind this. I'm someone who, way back early on, I loved the AS Val because that thing had insane TTK numbers and it had insane range, but it only had 30 bullets and it shot really fast. So it was basically like risk reward, especially in trios and quads. If you have more than one person, you're likely not going to be able to down more than one person. But this Type 100 reminds me so much of those pre-nerf AS Val days that I absolutely loved. So I love the Type 100, but it's not going to be my general recommendation for people. I've also got the Owen gun on here, the magenta. And you can see that both the Owen and the Type 100, even with hollow point, have more range than all the other SMGs with these builds. So it's kind of weird that they have the best TTK numbers and the best range, even with hollow point. A bunch of these other ones don't even have hollow point because I didn't want that 80% reduction to range, but because the Type 100 and Owen have so much range, I feel like I can get away with just increasing my DPS with the hollow point inside that first damage range. So the Owen is magenta. A well gun with this build, this is 9mm mag, so that's the default ammunition. The Owen has 8mm Kurs, so I think 8mm is now the way to go. after the recent changes. So I mentioned this in my video yesterday, but the Owen gun did get nerfed despite what the patch notes said. The rapid barrel used to be the go-to build. Rapid barrel with default ammunition. That gave you exactly 50 damage for upper body. It was head, neck, upper arm, and chest. You'd get 50 damage, so that gave you just insane TTK efficiencies and great TTK numbers. But now it does 49 damage, so that's exactly 1 damage too few to kill someone that has full plate in any game mode. So that's why we're going to switch to the 8mm Kurs, and we're not going to use a barrel at all. And that gives insanely good time to kill numbers and insanely good range. So that's kind of the logic behind that. But like I said, the well gun has default ammunition. I just feel like that's the best one. You can get slightly better TTKs with the, I believe it's like 45 caliber ammunition. I'm not positive which one it is, but it's the smaller mag that hits harder. You can get slightly better TTKs, but it's just not worth it for that added recoil and the smaller mag over the benefits that you get of this default magazine. I got the Lapa on here in green, so the Lapa is one of my all-time favorites. It's just consistent everywhere. Very low recoil, easy to control. It's going to have great sprint to fire times. That's something else I want to mention. So the Type 100 also has Gung Ho, which means that it has 0 milliseconds of sprint to fire time. So in any situation, the Type 100 is going to win, pretty much, against everything else. Not even close. It has 0 sprint to fire time, the best DPS by a mile, the best time to kills by a mile in every game mode. It's just insane how fast it can kill people. But again, it's really hard to use because it has only 36 bullets, and the reload's kind of slow also. Owen gun's going to have the worst sprint to fire. Just overall, it has like default SMG sprint to fire time, but the well gun's going to have 0. Lapa, because we have the Raider stock on there for this build, is going to have even lower sprint to fire than default SMG sprint to fire. PPSH is going to have around the default SMG sprint to fire. CX9 is going to have better than almost all of these. Maybe not the Lapa though, because it has that 5mm laser, which reduces sprint to fire times a bunch. And then again, I have another well gun build on here for hip fire, and that has Gung Ho again, so 0 millisecond sprint to fire time. So that's something I think people sleep on. It's such a good perk, and it really kind of it's a huge bump for these guns. If you include sprint to fire time and TTK, you're going to see that the Gung Ho perk just dramatically helps. But anyway, the Lapa is more of like a sniper support kind of SMG. That's going to be tomorrow's video, by the way. It's going to be it'll probably be snipers, and then I'll do sniper supports after that. But the Lapa is a great sniper support. We're going to have a few interesting ones for that. PPSH is my pick for hipfire. So PPSH, CX9, and Wellgun, these last 3 are supposed to be hipfire guns. So if you're someone who likes to use hipfire a lot, I think hipfire is really good for mouse and key players specifically. These are great builds for that. I couldn't really pick a winner here. They're all 3 pretty good. The CX9 I kind of put in here to appease some people because it seems like a lot of people are obsessed with this gun, but I don't like it at all. It has terrible iron sights. It has slow movement compared to the other guns. I know you can get fast reload, but it only has 50 bullets, and it shoots really fast, so those 50 bullets disappear like instantly. I just put it in here because it does have pretty good TTK numbers, and it has great hipfire. So it's a decent gun, but I just think there are better options. I think the PPSH with this build is going to be better for hipfire, and the Wellgun with this build is also going to be better for hipfire, especially because you get Gung Ho. Because again, Gung Ho, especially with hipfire, is even better because, you know, if you have Gung Ho and you have the ADS still, then that's not great. But with a hipfire build, having Gung Ho, you can instantly just start hipfiring someone. It's pretty crazy how good that is. So basically, in summary, the Type 100 is fantastic. It's the best if it had a bigger mag. But overall, I think the Owen gun with the 8mm Kurs and no barrel is going to be the way to go for most people. You can either put remove stock. It has quite a bit of recoil and it's very bouncy. So remove stock obviously increases that recoil, but it does give you nice benefits, better ADS time, better sprint to fire time, and better movement. All are things that the Owen gun really needs. So it's a great attachment if you can deal with the recoil to use. But me personally, I think I like the Owen gun built this way. Recoil booster, 8mm Kurs, slate reflector, M1941 hand stop, hollow point, acrobatic quick, and rubber grip. But I like to actually just take off the stock. So it's going to be no barrel and no stock. So you're only going to use 8 of the attachment slots. And that makes the recoil feel, honestly, to me, better than that old rapid gun or rapid barrel build that people were using before this patch. And this thing just deletes people. It can kill people so crazy quickly if you hit the right shot locations. And you can see in combination, using the combination shot percentages, even with that, it comes out ahead of everything else in the game except the Type 100. So all around, I really think there's only one SMG that stands out above everything, and it's still the Owen gun, even after the nerf and the changes. I think the Owen gun is still the best for most situations. Again, if you want something that has less recoil, probably going to recommend the well gun, and that's what this first build is like the low recoil all around well gun, and then the second well gun on here is specifically for hip fire. So if you're someone who likes to hip fire, you can use this brown line well gun, and then if you're someone who just wants an all-around SMG, then the cyan is going to be like the ADS well gun. Again, the Lapa is great for that same idea. It actually beats the well gun in the first damage range and the second damage range and all the way out. I think the Lapa, I talk about this all the time, but it's been slept on for a very, very long time. It's a great gun, but it's hard to use it as an SMG rather than a sniper support because there are guns like the Type 100. There are guns like the Owen gun who just kill quite a bit faster. And in SMG range, that's generally the most important thing. So overall, yeah, Owen gun's going to be top. PPSH, well gun for hip fire. Type 100 if you want something that just deletes people, but it's hard to use because of the small mag. For me, the way I play, I love using the Type 100. I think it's so good. But in general, Owen gun I think is going to be the way to go. I wanted to show this real quick just so you guys can see another reason why I'm talking about the Owen gun so much as like the recommended gun for everyone. Obviously, it has that 60 round drum mag, so that's way bigger than the 36 rounds that you get with the Type 100. And if you hit chest shots, so I switched this chart to chest shots now, chest, neck, head, if you hit that only, which is something that's relatively common, not super common, but relatively common to just hit those shot locations, you're going to see that it's going to have just insane time to kill. It has 463 millisecond time to kill, which is actually faster than that Type 100 build. So if you hit those vital areas, chest, neck, head, it's actually going to beat the Type 100. So that's again why it's going to be my front runner for the vast majority of players. I still think it's quite a bit ahead of pretty much every other gun in the game for general usage. Also wanted to quickly add the Arma. This is the SMG that got buffed pretty heavily. It's a new SMG. Got buffed pretty heavily in this patch, and people are going to ask why I didn't include it. So it's this dark line. It's kind of hiding behind the magenta line, but I'm toggling it on and off there. You can see it's right behind the Owen gun in this this combination shot location, but it only has 9 meters of range. This is the absolute fastest time to kill version of this gun with the 315mm barrel and the 30 Russian short 34 round mag, and it's virtually unusable with this build. It has so much recoil. The visual recoil is terrible. So the reason I didn't include it is because in most cases it's just not very competitive even after the big buffs. It might sneak into my sniper support recommendations. We'll see. I haven't fully thought about that yet. It's just like preliminary thoughts in my head after working on this video. But yeah, it just doesn't really compete in any meaningful way. It can have pretty good time to kill, but that makes the recoil just terrible, and it has terrible range compared to the Owen, so there's just not a lot of reason to recommend it over something like the Owen. So on the best TTK calculator, I want to mention a few of the other top front runners that I didn't include in this. The Fennec is up there-ish. It's not like near the top, but it's relatively close. The Modern Warfare AUG with 5.56 and the Sten, those all appear close to the top, like 100 milliseconds slower than the Type 100 or 130 milliseconds slower, and then 50 milliseconds slower than the Owen. The reason I didn't include them is because they just don't compete for other reasons like mobility, damage per mag. There's just a bunch of different things that go into this, and I don't think those guns really compete with the meta. They're good, and you can use them, especially in like solos and things, but just know that they're probably not the absolute best option. Some other really good guns that I didn't mention, the MAC-10 Cold War PPSH are very similar weapons. Cold War PPSH has a little bit better time to kill, but they have super similar mobility. Cold War PPSH also obviously has a bigger magazine, so that's a big benefit for a fast-firing gun like that. But they both have pretty decent time to kill. They're both very easy to use, very easy to control, so they're kind of similar to the Lapa in that way, but I didn't include them because the Lapa is kind of just better, and the well gun's kind of just better for that role. But they are good options, and very forgiving because they have super high fire rates compared to the well gun and the Lapa. MP7, another very good option, very low recoil, but it's just kind of hard to get around that slower Modern Warfare mobility. But it is a decent gun. It's great for hip fire, and it has very low recoil, obviously. Modern Warfare AUG I talked about. OTS is still decent. Good time to kill numbers in that first damage range, but it only has like 7 meters of range, which is pretty crazy. You can get it up to like 9 or 10 with the Task Force barrel and the long suppressor, but overall, again, it just the time to kill don't match up with the Owen, and there are other reasons too, because the Owen has another 6 meters of range. and a much bigger magazine. And there's just a lot of reasons that I don't recommend that over some of the other things. And then obviously the AS44 has gung ho, so it can kind of be used as an SMG because it gives it 0 sprint to fire time and it has insane time to kill. But it's one of those guns that's really hard to use because it has a lot of recoil. So anytime you try to build it as an SMG, you're going to try to get those ADS times down, and that's going to just kill the recoil when it already had a lot to begin with. So that's why it's not really compared here. And then the Volk also has gung ho, which is why it can be used as an SMG. The Volk got a bunch of buffs in this patch, and you'll probably see it tomorrow in my or the next day in my Sniper Sport video because it just kind of fits in really nicely for that. And then the Fennec, again, fast time to kill, but there's just so many things that are bad about it. Small magazine, very bad movement speed when you actually put attachments on it, that it just doesn't make the cut. All right, so these are the recommended builds up on the screen. Again, my personal way to run the Owen is actually just to take the remove stock off because that seems to really have a big effect on the recoil. And this already has pretty bad recoil, so it would be this exact build of the Owen minus that remove stock. But the first well gun here is more of a general purpose well gun, and then the second well gun is going to be the hip fire well gun. So they're both great options. One's going to have, obviously better hip fire. One's going to have worse hip fire. One's going to have better aim down sight recoil. And the well gun doesn't have much recoil anyway, so you can kind of get away with using that hip fire barrel. So I personally really like the hip fire build. They have the same damage range. The difference is just hip fire versus, recoil. So that's the only change there. But overall for hip fire, I do think the PPSH41 with this build is the best recommendation. And then LAPA well gun are going to be the 2 recommendations just for general use, longer range use, along with this Owen gun. Those are going to be the top 3. And then if you want something that just melts people, the Type 100 for sure. But that's all I wanted to cover. I'm going to generate this share link, and I will put this in the video description. And then you guys can actually just click that link, and it'll take you right to this page. Just click the summary table at the top to see all the attachments. And that way you can very quickly get the recommended builds for all these things. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really think the Owen's the only big-time front runner right now. Obviously, the Type 100 is better in a lot of ways, but it just has such a small mag that it's really difficult to use. So yeah, we get the new meta of Season 3, and it's the same as the last meta, just with a couple different attachments on the Owen. But that's all I wanted to talk about today. Hope you guys found it informative and useful, and I will see you all in the next one.